Okay, so in the previous lesson, we locked down all the location values and the scale values for all the bones on our rig, so it makes it easy to work with it in pose mode. This concept again is only internal to Blender. Now, in order to build the module-based rigging system, which is the non-deformed bones that will drive these bones to give us much more realistic human figure movements automatically, what we need to do is cover some really important concepts when working with bones. So the first thing that I want you to do is go under File, do New, and just do Reload Startup File. Press the A key to select everything, do X, and delete. Now go under File, do Save As, and save this as Bone Concepts 1.blend. Okay, so the first thing that I want you to do is go ahead and open this up and click your left mouse button and just collapse everything. Go ahead and open up the display. And for now, just turn off the grid floor, the x-axis, and the y-axis, and go ahead and click your left mouse button over here. So this is right now an empty workspace. So what you're looking at over here is what is known as world space. Now, in order to see the center of the world space, we have to have some sort of a visual cue. We can do this by enabling at least the x-axis and the y-axis. This again is just visual. So wherever these two lines intersect is the center of the world space. Go ahead and turn on the grid floor. So I'm going to refer to the center of the world space as the center of the 3D grid. Now, this center is a major reference point that is used by every object that gets added inside the 3D view. The reason for this is because Blender has to track where objects are inside the 3D view, and it does it by looking at the center of this 3D grid. So if you click your left mouse button to place the 3D cursor over here and open up the 3D cursor panel, you will notice that it's going to show you how far it is away from the center of the 3D grid. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in with the middle mouse button. When we do Shift C, the X, Y, Z should get zeroed out. Now, in order to add objects inside the 3D view, it is all based on where this 3D cursor is. Go ahead and click it right about here. Now do Shift A. Go ahead and add a cube. Now when we click on this cube, we can see that it's going to match exactly the same location as the 3D cursor. Now, what I want you to do is click on this cube and do Alt G to reset the location. Now when we click on this red arrow, green arrow, and a blue arrow, you can see that the object is keeping track of how far it has moved from the center of the 3D grid. And this is what these numbers are showing. It's talking about the origin point that belongs to this object. Now when we press the tab key, X, and delete all these vertices and do tab, it's really just an origin point that belongs to the cube. And if we open this up, the vertices that were defining this cube are kept in the mesh data block. Go ahead and do Control Z a few times to bring the cube back. Now go ahead and press the tab key. Click on a vertex over here. Notice that the vertex is showing how far it is away from the origin point. Now if we click on a global, we can see how far the vertex is away from the center of the 3D grid. Of course, if you click your mouse right about here in the middle and just drag it down, type in a 0, the vertex will go to the center of the 3D grid. Do Control Z to undo this. Now when we click on a local and do the same thing over here, type in a 0 and enter, it's going to go to the center of the origin point. Do Control Z to undo this. Let's go ahead and now switch back to object mode. Now, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. Notice that over here, Blender is keeping track of how far the object is from the center of the 3D grid. Now, when you add objects inside the 3D view, they are going to match their local axis exactly to the world axis. This is their default behavior. Now here you can see when it comes to rotations, Blender somehow needs to keep track of how much you are rotating this object. So it will always start out at a 0 value. So when we press the R key 2 times and rotate this object, right, this is how you know how much your object has rotated. Same thing with scale. It's always going to start out with a value of 1. So when you press the S key to scale, you can scale this object and it tells you by how much you are scaling. Now we can reset all these values by pressing Alt R to reset the rotation, Alt G to reset the location, and Alt S. So as you can see, it doesn't matter what we do to this object, whenever we reset these numbers, the object will always go to the center of the 3D grid. Okay? Now, what I want you to do is press the 1 key and then press the 5 key to go into orthographic view. Go ahead and zoom out until you get the big grid units. Now here we're going to click on this, we're going to press the control key down, click on this red arrow and move it to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here we've moved this object 5 units to the right. Now I want you to do a Shift D to duplicate this object, right click to cancel the movement, click on this blue arrow and bring it up, pressing the control key down about 1 or 2. Okay, so here you can see that it's moved 5 units to the right on X and 4 units up on Z. Okay, now of course when we do Alt G, the object will go back to its center. Do Control Z to undo this. Now what I'm going to show you is a very important concept to understand in Blender. When we click on this object, which will be the child first, press the Shift key down and click on its parent. When we do Control P and click on Object, if you click on this object, you will see that it's moved. It's again showing the same thing, 5 units to the right on X. And this object is going to show you exactly the same numbers. Okay? Now, when we click on this object and do Alt G, it's going to go back to the center of the 3D grid. Do Control Z to undo this. Now, when we click on the parent and press the Control key down and move this object back to the center of the 3D grid, when you click on this object over here, you'll notice that it shows the same numbers that it had when it was over here. Okay, so when you do Alt G to reset the location, you'll notice that it ends up over here. The reason for this is because when you create a parent-child relationship, in order for the child to move wherever the parent goes, the child basically looks at where it was originally when the relationship was created, and an imaginary origin travels with the parent. I'm going to do Control Z to undo this. So if we click on this parent and press the G key to move it anywhere over here, click on this child, do Alt G, it's just going to go back to 0, right? So the center, imaginary center, is over here. Now when we go to the Object tab on this child object and remove the relationship, this object should jump to the center of the 3D grid. Go ahead and click it. See? Now do Control Z to undo this, so it'll go back to the way it was. Now, when we click on the child and actually move the child, right, to change its distance, it's again doing this based on that imaginary origin over here, right? When we do, see how I've moved this object over here? When we click on the X, it's going to go back based on where the original origin point was. Okay, I'm going to do Control Z to undo this. Now, as I've already shown you, that if we click on this parent, let's say move it over here, and now click on this object, and if we go into this panel and just click on object and select it again, then what's going to happen is that this child is going to basically move that imaginary origin point to its parent. Okay, so just make sure that you understand what I've showing you over here when it comes to parent-child relationships. So go ahead and now just reload this file, press the 1 key, and then press the 5 key to go into ortho, do file and save. Okay, so what I want you to do now is go ahead and open up this, do Shift A and add a cube, go ahead and zoom in, press the tab key to go into edit mode, do W subdivide. Over here we're going to increase this by 2. Now do the middle mouse button to rotate, click on this vertex, press the Shift key down, click on this one, this one, this one. Just press E to extrude something out, press the tab key to go back into object mode, press the 1 key to go to your front view. So what we want to do is change the orientation of this object, meaning that we want to keep the rotation at 0 and the location at 0. So if we press the R key 2 times to rotate this object, let's say we click on this red arrow and move this object over here, we can tell Blender to keep this object like this as its default orientation by doing Control A. So here when we do apply rotation, you'll notice that basically the origin itself has reset the rotation, but it didn't do anything to the vertices that define this object. So in the same way we can do this with location. When we do Control A and do apply location, it of course is going to move the origin to the center of the 3D grid, but the vertices that define this object are going to stay put. So this means that when we press the R key 2 times and press the G key to move this object, when we do Alt R and G, it's just going to go back to the way it was. Okay, now what I want you to do is press the tab key and click on this vertex. So right now this vertex is showing how far it is away from its origin point because we moved it. Now press the G key to, let's say, move this vertex over here. Now we cannot reset the location of this vertex to its origin point like we could do in object mode. If you do Alt R, you'll notice that it's just going to rotate the vertex, right? Because we had it selected. If we do Alt R again, it's just basically rotating it. We do Control Z to undo this. Okay, so that's not going to happen. The reason I'm showing this to you is because this is how it works in bones. I'm going to do Control Z to undo this. What I mean by this is, as I've shown you, a bone is simply just 2 vertices and an edge, right? So if we click on this vertex, press the Shift key down, click on this vertex, do Shift D and move this over here. If you zoom in, you'll see that it looks very familiar because it looks like a bone in stick mode, because that's what a bone is. It's just the tail and the head. But bones are a special object in Blender, so of course they're treated differently. So if we click over here, imagine that this is the tail. If we press the R key to rotate, nothing's going to happen, right? Because it's not a bone. Okay, so that's how that concept is going to work. So we're going to see that a little later when we look at the armature. So here what I want you to do is go back to object mode, do X, and now delete this object. So now you understand this idea behind location, rotation, and a scale. Now do Shift C to place the 3D cursor back in the center, do Shift A and add a cube. Now go ahead and do the middle mouse button to rotate and just zoom in a bit over here. Now over here what we're looking at is the 3D manipulator because we have the object selected. And over here it's showing that it's in global mode. Again, the idea here in Blender is that when you press the R key 2 times, you can rotate this object in any way that you want. Blender doesn't care. It will do whatever you tell it to inside the 3D view. When you press the G key, it's the same exact thing. Okay? Now, if we go to object mode and enable the actual axis object, and over here, I just want you to go ahead and make this wire so we can see what's going on. So again, this is the local axis that matches the global axis because this is Blender's default behavior when it adds objects inside the 3D view. Don't get fooled by this cube. These are just the vertices that define it. Okay? Now, when we click on a local, here we're saying that we want to move this object based on its local axis. Okay? That's a Z, Y, and X. So what I want you to notice over here, that when we are on global and click on this red arrow, you notice that we're only moving on the x-axis. Of course, if we click on local, click on this red arrow, it's going to do the same thing because the axes are matching over here. Now, if you press the R key, press the Z key, and just rotate this over here, go back to global, notice that when we click on this red arrow, only the X value is going to change. Okay, this is super important because it doesn't matter how the origin was rotated, the location over here will only show you what is going on inside the 3D view based on the world coordinate system. Now, when we click on a local and click on this red arrow and move it, of course, the y-axis is going to change because if you look, we're actually moving here up along the y-axis and over here to the right on the x-axis. Okay, now if you press the R key 2 times and let's say rotate it like this and click on the red arrow, all 3 axes are going to change. Okay, now go ahead and do, actually let's go ahead and just reload this file and I'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you.